Now that our cakes are leveled and torted, it's time to start assembling the layers. But before we do that, I want to give you a few pointers. It's important that you always assemble the cake with the baked side up, and the reason is it's nice and level, as you can see, and it's pretty much crumb-free, and that's going to be really important when we start to ice the cake. You'll see why. Bake side up means the side of the cake that touches the bottom of the pan when you're baking it. It's also the side of the cake that doesn't need to be leveled because it's already perfectly flat. If you're using a turntable to assemble your cake, you're going to want to make sure that you're using a cake circle underneath, because it's the only way you can pick up the cake and transfer it, say, from the countertop to your turntable or to a cake stand. Speaking of cake stands, if you plan to move your cake after it's assembled and iced, you need to make sure you're using cake circles, or you just won't be able to pick it up and move it. So if you're not using a turntable to assemble and ice, you're going to want to do it directly on your cake plate or your cake stand. Here I have a 10-inch and an 8-inch cake circle, and you can use either size. It's really your own preference, but a couple of reasons why I'm using these particular sizes. If you're going to be transferring or transporting your cake in a cake box to the party, you're going to want to use a cake circle that's a little larger than your actual cake so that you can reach in, and it's got a little lip, and be able to pick it up without getting your fingers in the icing. If your cake is going to go on a pretty cake plate or a cake stand, you're going to want to make sure that the cake circle is the same size as your cake so that no cardboard shows out around the edges of the cake stand. If you're going to put it on a cake stand, you could actually just pipe a border to hide any little cardboard that might be showing. Before we put the cake on the cake board, we are going to put a few dots of icing on the cake circle. And then I'm going to spread it around with a spatula. And then I'm going to go ahead and put my cake on top of it. And this is going to act like a glue to help secure it to the cake board and keep it from sliding around. If you're not using a cake circle, just be aware that you have to assemble and ice your cake on whatever surface you plan to serve it on, whether it would be your turntable, a cake plate, or a cake stand. I'm going to use my non-slip surface, as I used before, to keep the cake from sliding around. And so it's going to be just like that. And that way, as I turn the turntable, it's going to be nice and secure and won't move. I have my decorating bag fitted with a number 12 tip. And I'm going to be creating a dam of icing all the way around just inside the outer edge of the cake. And this dam is going to help my filling from seeping out. So I'm going to show you how to do this. I'm going to be holding the bag just right above the surface. And I'm going to be squeezing and turning the turntable at the same time to create a dam of icing all the way around the cake. Now, if this dam broke a little bit, because sometimes when you're first, as a beginner, you're learning the pressure control. If it would break a little bit, it's okay. No one's ever going to see this. So you could just go back in and pipe just a little bit of extra icing to fill in that spot. So as you can see, my dam of icing is just maybe like a 1/4 of an inch inside the edge of the cake. You don't want it to be too close to the edge or kind of hanging off the edge because it literally could fall off. Another thing to keep in mind is you want your dam of icing to be the same color as the icing that you're going to put on the outside of your cake. Reason being is, as you stack the layers, the icing dam might seep out just a little bit. And say, for instance, you were icing your cake blue and you have a white dam on the inside, you're going to get streaks of white icing that might seep through, and that wouldn't look very pretty. So the method I showed you was using the turntable, but if you don't have a turntable, it is okay. It's just that you'll have to use your arm more. In this case, I was able to hold my arm pretty still, but you would have to just use your arm all the way around the cake. Let's move on to filling the cake. The dam of icing is really, really important because when you start to apply your filling, it's going to keep it from seeping out. I'm going to be using strawberry filling today, and this is considered a wet filling. Other wet fillings would be like custard or puddings or compotes or some type of pastry filling, and they require a dam of icing. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do this. You want to make sure that your filling is at the same height of your dam of icing, because as you stack the layers, you want to make sure that it continues to stay even all the way up. Adding filling between your layers holds the layers together and also creates a really great flavor and height to your layer cake. Just think how tasty this is going to be. So I am just using a sweeping motion with my angled spatula, and I want to make sure that it's really level all the way across the top of the cake. So you notice I'm always going from side to side. I'm never picking straight up, because if you do, the filling could come up, your icing can come up, and the crumbs underneath it. So you never want to do that. Just sweep and kind of go to the side and then lift up. If you're using buttercream icing as your filling, you really don't need to create the dam around the side of your cake, but actually for beginners it works really well because it helps you then spread out a nice uniform layer of icing. So again, as you stack your cake, everything stays nice and even. One other thing, you can use fresh fruit in your cakes, which tastes really, really yummy, but keep in mind, after you assemble and ice it, you're probably going to want to serve it pretty much right away, because fruit is quite juicy and it will start to seep out. Now I'm going to go ahead and put my layer back on the top of this cake. See how this is done. You're just going to carefully line it up. Go ahead and then just let my layer fall. A little bit off. I'm just going to move it, make sure it's straight. So I'm going to show you something here. You can see that there's a little bit of icing from the dam, and that's okay, but just keep in mind that one of the reasons why you want the dam to be a little farther in is so that not too much of it squeezes out. Buttercream is a classic filling of choice, but there are other options that you're going to want to try, like raspberry filling, chocolate filling, apricot, and even strawberry cream. We have a ton of recipes on Wilton.com, so make sure you check it out.